Hello, this is Business Live from the BBC with Aaron Heselhurst and Ben Thompson.
The giant Sony Corporation, you know, it's been hitting the headlines for all the wrong reasons of late. I tell you what, its latest numbers just out suggest it might be turning the corner.
Yeah, we'll have the details because it's our top story today, Thursday, the 30th of April. The tech giant has reported a $1 billion loss, but it says it's upbeat about the future. I'll have the details for you live. Also in the programme, growth in the US economy. That's slowed to a snail's pace, but can the world's largest economy get back up to speed? And after those disappointing figures in the US, markets are disappointed about the implications for an interest rate rise. Faint hopes for a July hike now look even fainter.
And we're going to be getting the inside track on the world of big money commercial property deals. Will the boom being experienced in many markets around the world turn to a bust? Well, we're going to be talking to this lady right here. She is in the studio, Trish Barrigan, the co-founder of the real estate investment firm Benson Elliott Capital. If you're on the move, let us know what you think of all the stories we're covering. Stay with us and stay in touch on social media. Just use the hashtag. It's easy. It's right there. BBC Biz Live.
Only easy if you remember to say it, Aaron. A very warm welcome to the programme. Now, we're starting with Sony and its battle to turn around its business after years of heavy losses. The Japanese electronics and entertainment giant has been struggling with tough competition from Asian rivals in the smartphone and TV market. Now, in recent months, its movie studio Sony Pictures, well, that was rocked by the biggest hacking attack ever to hit a corporation. So here's what you need to know from the numbers today. Well, there it is. Sony's announced a loss of 126 billion yen. That's in the year to March. It's around $1 billion, but of course, it's a lot less than it had previously warned. Sony is also forecasting a return to profit this year of over $1 billion, a big turnaround. Now, since he took over in 2012, Chief Executive Kaz Hirai has pushed through a major restructuring of the company. That includes selling off its PC business. He's also slashed 15,000 jobs right around the world. Well, investors seem to think that it's beginning to pay off. Sony shares are up 84% in the past 6 months. They hit a 7-year high last week. But the turnaround plan and the company's reputation, of course, has taken a big battering from that huge hacking scandal.
Indeed. Good on you, Ben. Let's get more. Our correspondent Theo Leggett's been following the story and joins us. Theo, good to see you. Hey, welcome to Biz Live, your first one, right?
Great to be here.
Yeah, we're going to get you more, don't you worry. Hey, look, Ben, it's astonishing, right? In some ways, some will maybe feel sorry for Sony because it's been bashed and bashed about the hacking scandal. But I tell you what, it's got to be doing something right, pleasing investors. 84% increase in shares in 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, they've clearly been through the mill with a hacking scandal, the reputational damage. We all know far too much, really, about relations between Angelina Jolie and her producers. But on the financial side, things are improving. Yes, there's a big headline loss, but underneath, if you strip out restructuring costs and problems at the mobile phone division, things are getting better. And that is largely down to the restructuring and also the way in which Sony has changed its philosophy. We all know about Sony as the company which developed the Sony Walkman, the PlayStation, things like that. But now they're getting into things like sensors for camera phones, so bits for the cameras in the iPhone 6 and the Galaxy S6.
And that's it. Sorry, can I say that's interesting because every time Apple sells an iPhone, Sony's
making money. Yes, yeah. But it's not very popular with some of the old guard within Sony and former Sony executives.
That's the old boy club, some refer to, right?
And is that the only way that Sony can actually make money these days? It was synonymous with all the consumer goods. Any living room, any lounge around the world would have a Sony TV, a Sony video player, a Sony DVD player, a Sony Walkman, all of that, the consumer goods. And now its future, it seems, is very much in the back end, the component part of the business.
Well, Katsuo Hirai, the chief executive, says he doesn't really care where the innovation comes from, so long as it's innovation. But it does seem now that the company's focus is on getting down to the small parts that can be fitted into other people's products, rather than things developed in its own name.
Can the chief, can he shake the old boy club? Because that's always been regarded as a problem for modern-day Japan, the old corporate Japan, the boys' club, if you will. He's got to shake that to keep Sony moving forward, right?
Yes, absolutely. But as ever with business, it depends entirely on the bottom line. If he can show that he's taking an ailing business and returning it to profitability, and good profitability, then, frankly, the old boys club don't have a leg to stand on. He has to show that he can produce the goods, that he can get the finances back in order, and then his strategy will be vindicated.
OK, Theo, great stuff as always. Your Biz Live cherry has been popped. It's official. We'll talk to you soon. Good on you. Theo Legate.
Theo, thanks so much. Good to see you. I just want to run you through some of the other business stories today because Greece has yet another meeting with European creditors later. That's in a bid to secure much-needed funds. Talks have been dragging on for 3 months with little sign of progress, raising fears that the country may be unable to strike a deal in time to avoid a debt default. Greece faces nearly €1 billion worth of debt repayments to the IMF by May the 12th.
State-owned Royal Bank of Scotland, RBS, has posted a loss of $687 million. That's the first 3 months of this year. All thanks to legal and restructuring costs. Now, before, of course, the 2008 financial crisis, RBS Group was briefly the largest bank in the world. The bank says it's now making good progress towards its targets for 2015 and creating a stronger, simpler business.
Now, have you got your hands on one? Because Apple apparently has limited the availability of its new Apple Watch after problems with a faulty component. That's according to reports in the Wall Street Journal today. The newspaper says the Chinese-made part that it calls a taptic engine that produces a sensation of being tapped on the wrist if you get a notification. The company has not given any sales figures, though, for the Apple Watch since it began taking orders for it earlier this month.
OK, let's go. I've got the tablet. My turn. We'll share it, though, of course. I know. Let's go and see what's been the buzz on social media. I like this, of course, BBC trending here that social media, and perhaps no surprise, is being used in a wonderful way to find those missing after the Nepal.
What's been so interesting, actually, is the access that people have been able to get to the internet and social media in the wake of that devastation there. You'll have seen all those pictures of all of that destruction, but clearly still able to get online, which is important.
And since it's on screen, throw this up again. God love her. Look at her. She's lathered there. The love-hate relationship with the sun. That's the BBC. You're going to be in the sun soon. Do you lather up?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. You gotta be careful.
Yeah, absolutely. You have a love relationship with the sun.
I have a love relationship with the sun. You want to do it, don't damage your precious little face, man, like mine. Old crocodile skin. And we just got one quick one because it's a story we talked about yesterday, if I can find it. Where is it?
You can't find it.
I can't find it. It was, saying that Adam Parson, our very own, this is it. Sainsbury's says it's the impossibility that Mike Coop, we talked about this yesterday, snatched checks in Egypt because he was in the London office that day. Yeah,
you'll know that story that's running that the boss of one of the biggest supermarket chains here in the UK could be jailed in Egypt over problems with corruption that they've alleged there. Now, let's take a look around the world at what business stories are making the headlines elsewhere. Marika Oy is in Singapore for us. Marika, some mixed news, some mixed figures from Japan's airlines. Just talk us through this.
That's right, Ben. The country's two main carriers, Japan Airlines and All Nippon Airways, both reporting their results for the fiscal year that ended in March. JAL said its profit fell by more than 10%, while ANA said that it posted its record profit, which had practically more than doubled since last year. JAL blamed the weak yen for practically wiping out all the benefit from cheap oil prices, while ANA said that its international flights have been benefiting thanks to the airport that's much closer to the city centre. JAL, though, still made a lot more money, in fact, more than 3 times the amount of money that ANA. After its restructuring, after its bankruptcy, its operation seems a lot slimmer.
OK, Marika, really good to see you, as always, talking us through the numbers. You saw it on the screen there, but I just want to show you confirmation of the markets in Asia overnight. Those falls there, the Nikkei slumping, as you can see, about 2.8% there. That's after, as Marika was saying, the Bank of Japan keeping monetary policy unchanged. Now, that decision was expected, but it really has disappointed those who had hoped for a bit of a ramping up of that stimulus programme that, frankly, markets like when there's cheap money around. The surprisingly bad numbers coming out of the US yesterday on economic growth haven't helped market sentiment today either. The US, of course, growing by just 0.2%. That's why European markets are looking like that, and all of this, of course, coming on top of that worrying slowdown in China. But what should we be looking out for on Wall Street today? That's the big question. Michelle Fleury has the details for us.
Well, investors will be driven by a variety of energy sources on Thursday because the world's biggest oil company, Exxon, reports quarterly earnings. Last year, Exxon estimated that every $1 drop in the price of a barrel of oil cuts annual earnings by $350 million. Now, given the slump in oil prices, that suggests Exxon's profits will be billions down on last year. Still, that won't surprise investors who are already digesting good news from the company, because on Wednesday it said it's raising its quarterly dividend by 6%. Meanwhile, alternative energy will also be in the spotlight. Tesla, the electric car company, is set to unveil its latest battery technology, not for cars this time, but for the home.
Good on you, Michelle. Yeah, we're going to talk about that story, Elon Musk. Anyway, Holly Cook, let's stay with the markets. Holly Cook from the investment website morningstar.co.uk joins us. Holly, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. Can we start with, Ben was just showing the European markets. We saw the close of the US markets. Off the back of those disappointing, I guess, US growth numbers. But what's interesting, normally, I thought, it's a mug's game to read the markets, because normally, when you got a negative number, the markets like that, because that meant the US central bank, the Fed, weren't going to raise, or aren't going to raise interest rates sooner than, as soon as we think, perhaps.
Well, I think in the statement they've deliberately kept all the wording very vague to keep their options, to keep the doors open. So there isn't really enough detail to trigger that much of a response, I think. And one of the things that's come out is that expectations are now that interest rate has basically been pushed further down the road. It's probably not likely to happen now until September, whereas we were previously looking kind of more like a June change, maybe.
Oh, OK. And I know we're going to talk more about the US, the US numbers and. Was it the season? Was that the reason? We'll talk about that in the Business Buzz.
Yeah, let's turn our attention though to Shell. We've had the figures from Shell and we're just looking at them there. And what's interesting about these figures is that it really does paint the picture of the whole industry, whereby it's the refining bit that's making money, the getting it out of the ground, the exploration for it, frankly, isn't, and that's as a result of that slumping oil price.
And I think partly that's why they've been so interested in BG Group, which they only recently announced their planned takeover of. But of course, you can't expect profits not to fall when your main product, oil price, sees that its price halve from $110 to sort of $50 in the space of a year.
And that consolidation, of course, clearly important, because it means that, frankly, it cuts costs. And that's one of the biggest things that they've got to do. I mean, when it comes to that, it's purely a cost-cutting thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, if you look across the whole global oil sector, you've got ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, Shell, really big names. But, our Morningstar analyst actually thinks that Shell is going to be one of the laggards over the whole of the next decade, because it hasn't had brilliant management history, and it's still got some issues there. So even with a BG takeover, it's not necessarily the best one out there for global investors.
OK. Well, Holly, great stuff. I know you're not going to go too far. We'll bring you back for the Biz Buzz. Thanks very much, Holly.
Thanks.
Now, still to come on the programme, commercial property is being seen as a big investment opportunity right around the world, but is the shine about to come off the market? We'll speak to one of the superstars of real estate in the world. That's Trish Barrigan.
And you're watching Business Live right here from BBC News.
I've done several films about Brooklyn. I don't know what it is, but there's something about the diversity, the culture, the people that make up this great borough.
From the shores of the Caspian Sea, in the ancient land of Azerbaijan, rises the first European Games. Be part of sporting history in Baku this June. The European Games. Baku 2015. Rise to the occasion.
You need police, fire, ambulance.
I'm the police.
Okay, and what's going on there?
I've been kidnapped and I've been missing for 10 years and I'm here.
May 6, 2013, the girls made their miraculous escape. Now, almost 2 years later, they're ready to tell not only Cleveland, but the world, their story.
Click, your essential viewing from the world of technology.
That is the home to the most important tech show of the year. This is a 3D printed mask of my face.
The first fully functioning hoverboard. I am floating on air!
A drone that can film all by itself. the smart belt.
We're on a tiny little speck in a vast galaxy.
We are going to make the entire programme using just mobile devices.
I can see my hands on the controls.
Yeah, I really don't mind my job sometimes.
The BBC introduces its first Women's Football Award, decided by you. You can vote at bbc.com/women's football or by SMS to +44 7786 202004. Text 1 for Veronica Buquete. Text 2 for Nadine Kessler. Text 3 for Kim Little. Text 4 for Marta. Or text 5 for Asisat Oshuala. Standard international text rates apply. The BBC Women's Footballer of the Year 2015. Who will you crown?
Hello, you're watching Business Live. Our top story today. There are signs that the giant Sony Corporation may finally be turning the corner. Its results out within the last few hours are much better than expected, losing about $1 billion, but it's optimistic about the future.
Expects a profit this year, which is a good sign. Don't forget, you can get in touch with us many ways. You use the hashtag BBC Biz Live, or you can get in touch. Tweet Ben, right?
Yeah,
you can get
at
you
BBC Ben Thompson.
And you can get me at BBC Aaron. Tweet me, I'll tweet you right back. So there you have it. So make sure you let us know what you think. Be nice. And of all the stories too.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to hear from you wherever you're watching us in the world today.
Let's talk about this commercial property, aren't we?
Shall we? Yeah.
It's an exciting story. The commercial property market is on the rise in many parts of the world, and it's making some people a lot of money. But the question is, can these rises be sustained? And, well, if not, who's going to get burned?
Yeah, one of the driving forces in the market, of course, is the explosion in demand for office space rentals in big skyscrapers. That's fueled by a shortage of space in big cities. So where are the global skyscraper hotspots around the world?
OK, let's take a look at that. Hong Kong, yes, Honkers leads the way with prime commercial office rents in skyscrapers rising by 11% to $250.50 per square foot in the second half of last year.
Hot on the heels of that came New York. Prices in prime skyscraper locations there, they rose to $150 a square foot. That's up by around 20%.
Yeah, Tokyo saw some more modest rises of just under 5%, but the figure there came in at around $120 per square foot.
And right here in London, while the figure rose by 7.7% to more than $108 in the second half of the year. It's interesting, just look at that graphic there. You can see how they compare. $250 a square foot in Hong Kong, $108 here in London. So
nice little graphic too.
Yeah, big difference.
Good stuff.
They've done well.
Let's chat to a woman who knows all about commercial property. Apparently it's in her veins. Trish Barrigan is co-founder of the real estate investment firm Benson Elliott Capital and joins us. Trish, great to have you in the studio with us. Lots to talk about.
Great to be here, thank you.
Can we just talk about what we were looking at, that graph and a bit of a boom. Is there a worry, got to get straight into it, is there a worry that there is a boom or a bubble being created? And if so, if it's going to pop, where does it pop?
Well, I think given the amount of capital that's been raised to invest in property globally over the last several years, I think there is some concern by various pundits that there could be a boom. But I don't think we're there yet. If you look at sort of where we are, real estate is very cyclical. And we're maybe only halfway to where we were at the top of the property market before 06, 07 in general. So I think there is still room to run.
Does the market give us, this commercial real estate market, does it give us an indication of the state of the global economy? Because I think it's fair to say we're seeing the UK and the US numbers recently. We're still seeing a very mixed picture around the world.
I think it does, but it's a laggard, right? Because it takes time for economic growth to drive through to create business confidence and to allow for job growth to fuel office demand. So it lags behind. You start to see the economic growth first that creates the office demand, and then people start to see a perspective of the potential for an increase in rents that will drive their investment decisions.
But clearly in Hong Kong's case, it's a shortage of land. It's a very small area, and they're putting up skyscrapers to get more space out of a limited amount of land. But then you compare it to somewhere like the Middle East, Dubai, for example. I spent a lot of time there. Prices soaring once again, but they've got infinite land. They've got deserts there that aren't built on. I mean, what is it that's driving? Is it purely demand, or it's a lack of space too in certain places?
Well, I think what we're seeing today is the global financial crisis dried up financing across the board, but certainly development finance. So, a lot of areas are waking up to the realization that there is a lack of new Class A modern office space that also meets the sustainability credentials that both tenants and investors are looking for today. And that's driving a lot of this new develentment.
Trish, can I ask you about just a little bit about you've got a great story, US-Irish national, grew up in France.
Yes.
You went through your university playing soccer. You got a soccer scholarship. Yeah, and we've been told, and looking at your background, you could have chosen many a field. Why real estate?
Well, I think I was fortunate enough to join a graduate training program at Goldman Sachs when I graduated from university, and I had the opportunity to work across different markets and asset classes. But having studied philosophy and sociology, real estate was very it was clear and understandable for me. It's a tangible asset class. It's easy to understand. And so that really drove my decision.
When you look at your time in the industry, and clearly it's very varied and very international, what is your, we've asked all the guests that have come on in this slot, what is your biggest challenge when you come to doing your job on a day-to-day basis?
Well, our business really is about intellectual capital, right? And understanding sort of the intuition, the perspective, and the judgment that one gains
it's all about
throughout
psychology,
their career.
Isn't it?
Yes. So the most difficult thing is really identifying top talent, recruiting and retaining top talent today. As economies expand, graduates and even members of my staff have opportunities to go elsewhere. So it's creating the opportunities for their careers to develop.
And you use a philosophy, I believe. Is it? It's flexible but fearless. How do you get that balance? How do you walk that line?
I think the important thing, and as I've seen in my career, is to take opportunities when they are presented. It certainly wasn't an easy decision to leave Goldman Sachs and move to the Middle East, but that really created the opportunity for me to be able to start Benson Elliott, a new business, and get the confidence of investors to back us.
When it comes to, and I hesitate to ask this question because it's a women doing a job that's important, and I hear that concept. But what's interesting is in certain industries we hear a lot about women in top jobs, things like hedge funds, and it seems very exciting, very new, very unusual. In your industry, have you ever faced problems like that, whereby someone said, gosh, this is a surprise, you're doing very well in an industry, and frankly, we're surprised that you're a woman doing it? I mean, it shouldn't exist, but it still does.
I think it does exist, and it is unfortunate because, women and men do think differently, and diversity of thought, I think, is critical to the success of any business, and it also avoids any biases. The reality is that the property industry, as well as the finance industry, have, for a long time been dominated by males. Today, top senior positions in property or real estate firms are less than 10% are held by women. So it is certainly something that we'd like to try to encourage young graduates to come into the industry and to work their way up.
Okay.
Interesting stuff.
It's
really
great stuff.
from
Yeah,
you.
Trish, thank you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Trish Barrigan there.
Fierce but fearless. Is that the phrase?
Yeah. Flexible.
Sorry.
But flealess. That's a new one. There, flealess. Like tomorrow, we're going to be going over the highlights and the low points of the week's
This is a low point.
No, it's not.
Our Chief Business Correspondent Linda Yu will be here to give us her insights on everything that's happened this week. That's here on the programme. Do send us your questions, comments and thoughts to Linda, and we will, of course, put them to her.
Yeah.
Lots of ways, though, that you can keep in touch with us here at the BBC. Yeah, it's even when we're on the move. So do let us know. Here's a quick reminder of how you can do just that.
The Business Live webpage is where you can stay ahead with all the day's breaking business news. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest details, with insight and analysis from the BBC's team of editors right around the world. And we want to hear from you too. Get involved on the BBC Business Live webpage at bbc.com/business. Or on Twitter, we're at BBC Business. And you can find us on Facebook at BBC Business News. Business Live on TV and online whenever you need to know.
You heard it there. Do get in touch with us about any of the stories that we are covering. So what else has the business media been taking an interest in? As you can see, Holly Cook is back with us from the investment website Morningstar. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, shall we start with this? Barclays, you and I of late have done a few, some of these global brands, corporations, looking at salaries, right?
How much they pay their staff.
How much they pay their staff, and things are improving. Barclays considers raising wages for lowest paid workers around the world. I mean, they do a living wage here in London or in the UK, don't they? They're talking globally now.
And I think one of the things that a lot of the banks have struggled with is actually keeping a cap or keeping a hold on the salaries of the people higher up, and particularly in the investment banking arm. So there's a move here to try and sort of rebalance some of that wealth, as it were, within each company.
But they say it's a bit rich. I mean, we've got global bankers on mega bonuses and big bucks talking about, well, actually, our lowest paid staff, so, you know, our catering guys, our cleaning guys, our, you know, security guys will try and raise what they get paid. But what's interesting about this, no detail. We're going to look at it, but no detail yet.
Yeah, a little bit of a sort of empty promise, perhaps. And it's definitely something we're going to have to keep the pressure on to see whether anything develops there.
OK, just very quickly, shall we just go over and take a look? Goldman and IDG put Bitcoin's basically Bitcoin back in the spotlight.
Yeah, so there was a lot of hype at first when Bitcoin was around, and then it seems to have all quietened down. And I think what's interesting is that sort of behind the scenes, it seems that some of the investment banks, Goldman Sachs in this case, is actually looking at sort of putting in place some plans for how they might progress forward. So it's an innovation story, really, about how do we move from sort of paper and metal currency to virtual currency, which does seem to be high potential for that to be the direction in the future.
Yeah, and so many criticisms, of course, about the security and the implications of all of that. Let's turn our attention to the US. We touched on it in our markets chat a little earlier, but the US economy, yes, they figures slowing to a crawl, a real worry there. That markets are doing one thing, they're quite excited. The economy is doing a very different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, but we have to remember, I think we saw this last year as well, that in the first quarter, they had such a horrible winter, and it's not difficult to imagine that you don't want to wade through several feet of snow just to go and buy a new shirt.
The shoppers don't go out, right?
And so you don't buy it online either because you can't trust that the delivery is going to be able to get to you. So that has a really big impact on consumption, which ultimately has an impact on GDP. So I think that there's a high chance we'll see upward revisions later on in the year, and we also might see future quarters sort of making up for some of that slow growth that we've had in Q1.
Yeah, it's like what we saw last year, of course. Very quickly, we've got about 20 seconds. Elon Musk, the Muskie's doing it again. A big announcement, batteries probably in the house.
And again, I think this is another innovation story, you know, because everyone's looking at, you know, how do we deal with the problem that we've got finite fossil fuels, and looking into renewable energy and green energy. And so I think this is another one to look out for in the future.
Holly, great stuff. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you, Holly. Thanks very much. That is it from the programme today. Much more business news, of course, throughout the day. But Aaron, and from me, we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
very soon.
Bye-bye.
Who will be the next British Prime Minister?
It's the most unpredictable and closely contested UK election in a generation.
And no one can cover it like BBC World News. Our unrivaled coverage will bring you the latest from the campaign.
An unprecedented look at the history and traditions of British democracy.
And all the drama of results night.
For unmatched coverage of the UK election, BBC World News and bbc.com/UK election.
Well, we've seen some pretty severe weather in the southeast of the United States recently, some pretty heavy downpours, some large hail and gusty winds. Most of that's moving out into the Atlantic, but some of it's moving south across the Caribbean with a coolish breeze following along behind. Still some rain to be had in the eastern side of the USA, roughly from West Virginia up towards Ohio. But elsewhere, there's a lot of dry weather to be had, bone dry over the next few days in California. Temperatures a good few degrees above where we should be. The winds are picking up. We've already seen some wildfires, so that's not a particularly good combination. Heavy rain is likely in central and northern parts of Peru into Ecuador, some parts of the western side of Brazil, but a decent day for much of central and northern Chile, and apart from the odd shower in Uruguay, it looks pretty good here. Should be a nice end to the week in Cape Town and in Lusaka, but up towards the eastern side, parts of Kenya and Somalia are going to see some pretty wet weather in the next few days. The breeze will be blowing across Saudi Arabia up into Iraq, so maybe a little bit of dust and sand blowing around here. Most places apart from that will be dry with some sunshine, although the cloud might just thicken up a little bit towards the north of Riyadh, bringing the odd shower. But as I say, most places dry, sunny, and temperatures, well, nudging their way towards 40 degrees for a few. Meanwhile, in Nepal, further heavy showers are in the forecast. Not going to rain all day everywhere, but when the showers come along, they could well be quite heavy. Risk of some heavy showers too into the north of Pakistan, also towards the northeast of India into Bangladesh. Some heavy downpours likely here, but the bulk of Pakistan, the northwest of India, should see some sunshine. Mumbai at around about 33, 34 degrees. Should be a nice end to the week in Japan. Some sunshine in Tokyo, sunshine too in Seoul, but a much thicker cloud across the heart of China, bringing some heavy rainfall and the risk of flooding here. Might see some rain towards Hong Kong Certainly some showers in Bangkok, and those showers will be up and down the Malaysian peninsula, so down towards Singapore, some rain at times, and some pretty wet weather too for Indonesia. Wet and windy for the northwest of Australia as a tropical cyclone slowly eases off, but it's also going to be gale force winds in the eastern side of Australia and some heavy rain from Sydney to Brisbane.